In the heart of ancient Rome, the year 67 AD marked a crossroads between unimaginable opulence and profound darkness. The city, with its sprawling marble forums, bustling marketplaces, and the ceaseless hum of ambition, was a marvel of civilization. Yet beneath the gilded surface, a shadow stretched from the imperial palace, cast by the troubled soul of Emperor Nero. Once hailed as a patron of the arts and a champion of Rome's glory, Nero had become the very embodiment of tyranny. His descent into madness was whispered in every corner. His unpredictable temper feared even by those closest to him. At the center of this spiral lay a singular loss, a moment that shattered the emperor's fragile grip on reality. Poppaea Sabina, the empress whose beauty and cunning were legend, had been the axis around which Nero's affections revolved. Poppaea was not merely a consort. She was a force, guiding policy and soothing the emperor's volatile moods. Her luminous presence had steadied him, her ambitions feeding and shaping his own. Yet love, in Nero's case, was inseparable from obsession, and obsession, when threatened, could turn lethal. The fateful day arrived in the summer of 65 AD. A heated argument erupted in the imperial chambers, the details lost to history, but the outcome tragically clear. In a fit of rage, Nero lashed out, striking Poppaea. The blow proved fatal, claiming not only his wife, but also the unborn child she carried. The palace was gripped by horror, the event cloaked in silence, and the emperor, confronted by the consequences of his violence, fell into a pit of despair from which he would never truly emerge. Nero's grief was not ordinary mourning. It was corrosive, a black tide that ate away at his self-control and twisted his perceptions. The image of Poppaea, radiant and cunning, haunted him day and night. He saw her in every shadow, heard her voice in every echo. The imperial gardens seemed emptier, the banquets hollow, and even the music he adored failed to lift his spirits. Rome continued its relentless march, but Nero was adrift, unmoored from reality, desperate to fill the void that Poppaea had left behind. And so, a chilling chapter began, one that would entwine the fate of a young freedman named Sporus with the emperor's unraveling mind. Raised within the imperial household, Sporus was known for his delicate features and quiet demeanor. At about 15 years old, he was far from the centers of power, yet fate had marked him for a role that defied comprehension. It was a subtle moment, a glance in a sunlit corridor perhaps, or a fleeting glimpse during a palace gathering, when Nero's gaze fell upon Sporus. The resemblance was uncanny, almost supernatural. Sporus's face carried echoes of Poppaea's grace, the curve of his jaw, the softness in his eyes. To anyone else, it may have been a passing coincidence. To Nero, in his fractured state, it was an answer to his longing. In that instant, Sporus ceased to be himself. He became, in Nero's fevered mind, a vessel for resurrection, an object through which the Empress could be restored. What followed was a horror cloaked in the trappings of imperial privilege. Nero summoned his physicians, men more accustomed to the subtle arts of healing than the brutal demands of their emperor. He ordered them to surgically alter Sporus, forcing the young man into a transformation that was as dangerous as it was cruel. The procedure, primitive, excruciating, and performed without anesthesia, was a gamble with death. Sporus survived, but the life he had known was irretrievably lost. The aftermath was a grotesque parody of affection. Sporus, now renamed Sabina, was clothed in Poppaea's gowns, bedecked with her jewels, instructed in her mannerisms and speech. Each day was a performance, a relentless rehearsal of someone else's existence. In the privacy of his chambers, Sporus faced the mirror, the reflection a stranger, a facade constructed by pain and desperation. The imperial household, complicit through silence, watched as a boy was erased and an empress was manufactured anew. The final act of this macabre play unfolded in the spring of 67 AD. Nero, determined to make his delusion reality, staged a wedding that was both lavish and chilling. The great hall was bathed in the golden glow of oil lamps, their flickering light gleaming off silks and polished marble. Courtiers assembled, their faces masks of polite congratulation, hiding the revulsion that churned beneath. Sporus, veiled and trembling, stood at the emperor's side. The vows were exchanged, words meant to bind two souls now serving only to deepen a young man's captivity. For Sporus, each moment was a perilous negotiation. A misstep, a gesture out of place, a word too hesitant, could provoke Nero's wrath. The imperial couple was paraded before the public, Sporus forced to endure the whispers and stares of Rome. To the outside world, he was Poppaea reborn, an empress in the emperor's eyes. But for Sporus, every day was an ordeal, a survival at the edge of madness. The spectacle did not end at Rome's borders. Nero, eager to display his reconstructed love, carried Sporus with him on his tour of Greece. The courts of Corinth, Athens, and Olympia were treated to the same charade, foreign dignitaries struggling to reconcile the fiction with the reality before them. The empire's reputation, already battered by Nero's excesses, fell further into disrepute. The emperor's delusions became the subject of ridicule and scandal, his authority undermined by his own actions. Yet within the palace, Sporus's ordeal continued, his spirit worn thin by the ceaseless performance. The years dragged on, each day marked by the same rituals, the same forced femininity, the same reminders of a life that was not his own. Outside, Rome simmered with unrest. Nero's extravagance, his disregard for the traditions that had sustained the empire, stoked rebellion. The Senate, once cowed by imperial power, found its courage. By 68 AD, the patience of Rome had snapped. Revolts erupted across the provinces. The military, once fiercely loyal, began to turn. In a desperate bid for survival, Nero fled the city, seeking refuge in a villa outside Rome. Sporus remained at his side, not as a companion, but as a living relic, a reminder of Poppaea, a talisman against the encroaching doom. As enemies closed in, Nero faced the end he had always feared. Confronted by the certainty of defeat and humiliation, he chose suicide, his last moments marked by panic and regret. With Nero's death, Sporus's fate hung in the balance. He was no longer the emperor's obsession, but his unique position made him a prize for the victors. Transferred from hand to hand, Sporus became an object of curiosity and control. Nidius Sabinus, then Otho, each ruler seeking to claim the shadow of Poppaea for themselves. For Sporus, the torment did not end with Nero's fall. It merely changed shape. He remained a symbol, his identity subsumed by the legacy of a woman he had never truly known. Under Vitellius, the cruelty reached its crescendo. The new emperor, eager to assert his dominance and entertain the masses, devised a spectacle that was both sadistic and demeaning. Sporus was to be paraded in the Colosseum, forced to reenact violent scenes, his pain a source of amusement for the crowd. At 20 years old, Sporus had endured more than most could bear. The prospect of public humiliation, of being reduced to a prop in the games, was too much. In a final act of defiance, Sporus chose poison over degradation, ending his life quietly, reclaiming agency in the only way left to him. Sporus's story, barely a footnote in the annals of Roman grandeur, is a testament to the corrosive power of absolute rule. The empire, with its soaring arches and triumphant legions, was built on the suffering of individuals, on stories like Sporus's, hidden in the margins, erased by the victors. His tragedy is haunting, not merely for the brutality he endured, but for the humanity that persisted, even in the face of relentless oppression. For centuries, history has glossed over the fate of Sporus, focusing instead on the drama of emperors and battles. Yet, his life is a mirror held up to the cost of unchecked authority, the ease with which a person can be stripped of identity, transformed into an object for another's pleasure or madness. Sporus's ordeal exposes the limits of power, the way it devours not only its victims, but also those who wield it. In the silence after his death, the imperial palace continued to glitter, its halls echoing with the laughter of new rulers, its walls bearing witness to fresh intrigues. Rome endured, its people moving forward, its ambitions undimmed. But beneath the surface, the memory of Sporus lingered, a ghostly presence in the city's collective memory, a reminder of the suffering that imperial splendor so often concealed. His final act, choosing death over humiliation, was not merely an escape. It was a reclamation, a statement that even in the direst circumstances, the human spirit can assert itself. Sporus could not control the events that shaped his life, nor the forces that sought to consume him. But in his last moments, he chose dignity over degradation, silence over spectacle. Today, as historians sift through the records of Rome's emperors, the story of Sporus emerges as a cautionary tale. It asks us to look beyond the triumphs and tragedies of the powerful, to seek out the voices that have been silenced, the lives that have been overshadowed. It reminds us that suffering, even when hidden behind golden walls and imperial decrees, is real and enduring. The age of Nero is long past, its excesses a byword for decadence and decline. The streets of Rome, once trodden by emperors and slaves alike, bear the marks of centuries. Yet the truths embodied in Sporus's life remain relevant. Power, when divorced from compassion, breeds monstrosity. Identity, when denied, becomes a battleground for survival. And memory, when reclaimed, offers a measure of justice to those history would otherwise forget. In remembering Sporus, we honor not only his pain, but his resilience. His life, shaped by forces beyond his control, was a testament to endurance in the face of overwhelming odds. His tragedy, woven into the fabric of Rome's history, serves as a quiet rebuke to the arrogance of power and the cruelty it can unleash. Let us not forget the lessons his story imparts. Behind every spectacle, every pageant of triumph, there are lives shaped and sometimes shattered by the ambitions of others. Sporus's suffering may have been ignored by his contemporaries, but it speaks to us now, across 2 millennia, as a plea for empathy and remembrance. In the grand tapestry of Rome, Sporus is a single fragile thread, easily overlooked, easily broken. Yet without threads like his, the tapestry itself is incomplete. His story, though brief and marked by sorrow, is a vital reminder that history is not merely the record of great deeds, but also the chronicle of human endurance. Through Sporus, we glimpse the true cost of empire, and as we remember him, we reaffirm our commitment to see the humanity in all who have been forced into the shadows of power.